Have you ever heard of a moment so unexpected, so miraculous, that it changes not only one person's life but everyone connected to it? Stay with me till the end, because what I'm about to share is more than just a story. It's about compassion, sacrifice, and how kindness can awaken miracles we never imagined. The story begins with Ava, a young nurse fresh out of medical school. She wasn't from a wealthy family, but her heart was full of love and responsibility. Her father had passed away years earlier, and she was now the sole breadwinner for her mother and younger brother. Every day, Ava worked long shifts at the hospital, often skipping meals, just to make sure her family could live a little easier. In the hospital's special care unit lay a man everyone whispered about, Richard Hale, a wealthy millionaire who had been in a coma for months after a severe car accident. His family rarely visited, too busy arguing over his will and inheritance. Most nurses treated Richard like a routine duty, just another patient to care for. But Ava saw him differently. Every morning, when she entered his room, she would gently talk to him as if he could hear. She would adjust his blankets, brush his hair, and most importantly, she would bathe him with tenderness and respect. For Ava, it wasn't about his wealth or his name. It was about dignity. She believed that even someone in a coma could feel kindness. So, while others rushed through their rounds, Ava took her time, softly humming, telling him about the weather, or how the hospital garden flowers were blooming. Days turned into weeks, weeks turned into months, and still, Ava kept bathing him, speaking to him, and treating him as though he were fully awake. But behind Ava's gentle smile was her own storm. Her mother's health was declining, her younger brother needed school fees, and her small salary barely covered food. Sometimes, she would break down in the supply closet, tears spilling as she wondered if life would ever get easier. Yet when she entered Richard's room, she always carried light. One rainy night, while giving Richard his evening bath, Ava's voice trembled as she spoke. "Mr. Hale," she whispered, "I don't know if you can hear me, but I believe people can feel love, even in silence. And if you can hear me, please, fight. Don't give up." And then it happened. A faint movement. At first, she thought it was her imagination, but then his fingers twitched. Ava froze, her heart racing. "Mr. Hale, did you just move?" Within seconds, his eyes fluttered open for the first time in months. Ava gasped, tears streaming down her face. Doctor, he's awake." The hospital buzzed with shock. Richard Hale, the man everyone assumed might never wake, had opened his eyes, and the first person he saw was not a family member, not a doctor, but Ava, the young nurse who had bathed him, cared for him, and spoken to him every single day. Recovery wasn't easy. Richard struggled to regain speech and movement, but Ava was always there, feeding him, encouraging him, reminding him he was not alone. Slowly, Richard began to piece together what had happened during his coma. Though he couldn't move, he confessed he could hear faint voices sometimes, and among them, Ava's voice was the clearest. "You never gave up on me," Richard said weakly one day, "even when my own family did." As Richard healed, he began to observe Ava more closely, and not just her care, but the exhaustion behind her eyes. He saw how she sometimes skipped meals, how her shoes were worn out, and how she never complained despite her struggles. One afternoon, Richard asked, "Why did you care for me like that, when you didn't have to?" Ava smiled softly. "Because every life has value, and I believe kindness can heal, even if no one else sees it." Richard was silent for a long moment. Then he whispered, "Kindness saved me." Months later, Richard was discharged, but the story didn't end there. A few weeks after leaving the hospital, Ava received a letter. Inside was a personal note from Richard and an invitation. Confused, she went to the address written inside a large community hall. To her surprise, she walked onto a gathering where Richard was waiting, healthier and smiling. In front of everyone, he announced, "This young woman bathed me when I was nothing more than a lifeless body. She spoke to me when the world had gone silent. She reminded me that even the richest man is still human, and dignity is priceless. Ava didn't just save my life, she gave me a reason to live again." And then, he revealed something that left Ava speechless. Richard had decided to dedicate a large portion of his fortune to build a free medical clinic, named after Ava's late father, to serve poor families who couldn't afford healthcare. He also offered to sponsor Ava's further studies so she could become a doctor, something she had always dreamed of but never thought possible. Ava burst into tears. The girl who had once been struggling to pay for her brother's school now stood at the center of a miracle she never asked for but one she had unknowingly created with her compassion. From that day forward, Ava's life changed, and not because she sought wealth, but because she gave love where it was needed most. And Richard, once a lonely millionaire, found family not in bloodlines, but in gratitude and kindness. So, if you're still listening, remember this: kindness is never wasted. You may not see the result immediately, but sometimes, it can awaken miracles you never imagined.